My name is Matthew Regentin, and I was a brand new agent, special agent, 2 weeks on the job on September 11th, 2001. Still hadn't even gotten a place in Pittsburgh, still hadn't even gone to the academy yet. And I was riding in with my OJT at the time, and he'd gotten a phone call from his wife to let him know what was going on. So by the time we got up into the office, the second plane had already hit, and we were just kind of scrambling to figure out what needed to happen. Again, that job was brand new to me. I had no idea what I was doing. Sometimes I still don't. And all of a sudden we get word that plane hit the Pentagon, and then another one went down not far from Pittsburgh. So we just kind of gathered our resources, and we sent somebody out to Somerset County to kind of check on things while we figured out what the marching orders were for all of the different law enforcement agencies in Pittsburgh, and ultimately we started heading that way out to Shanksville. We were there probably by the afternoon. I remember at least on September 11th, I really didn't see much on television at all because we were out there most of the day. We ended up obviously working hand in hand with the FBI out there and state police because we're out in the middle of the country, and if it was man-made, it came from the plane. So we ended up getting divided up into our teams, which is pretty much where we stayed for the next few weeks. A few of my colleagues worked in the area of where the crater was. So, we ended up finding a lot of very good evidence while we were there. But we were thinking all those things as we kind of focused and worked the scene, which included, most of the pieces of airplane. In retrospect, because of the area where I was working with my supervisor at the time, Dan Bay, and several other agents from our office in Pittsburgh and in Harrisburg, we didn't know, of course, if the human remains we were finding were victims or they were the terrorists, and probably a lot of both. There were a few other pieces of evidence that we came across, and that I think we could certainly attribute to being possessed by the terrorists that did it. A lot of personal effects of people that really got you thinking. I know like I said, our experience and our scene were a lot different than I think what a lot of other first responders had to deal with. But it definitely weighed on you a bit. We'd be on our hands and knees in kind of a gridded search pattern, and we'd take, maybe an area the size of a room one at a time and really look at everything closely. And a lot of evidence was there to be found. Didn't realize that till the end, how many people were involved in making that happen. I think about it a lot. Good memory. So my parents, they had moved to Western Maryland about, I'd say probably 6 years before this. And they had decided they wanted to come up and visit. We were staying at a hotel in Donegal, which was maybe one exit down from Somerset. And I knew they were coming up, and just for a quick overnight visit because, hadn't seen them, and I thought about it. I actually lost both my parents about 3 years ago, so it was a memory specifically of my dad that I remember is. So we're getting on we're on our way back. I'm driving my supervisor around, Dan Bay. He was one of the old school ATF guys that like to have the younger guys drive him around. And So we get on the turnpike, and as it turns out, I'm right behind my parents, because they were getting on there. And he said, yeah, blast up there. Let's see if we can catch them. I'm like, oh, no problem. So we went up, we pulled next to him, and, Dan threw on his NRT hat and kind of looked out, waved, and all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, there's Matt, blah, blah, blah. Well, we'd pull off, and it was a nice kind of reunion. It was one of those things where I knew my dad was really proud. Yeah, that was a good memory. Let me see. I think overall, I was very honored to be able to be part of that. I know at a time where pretty much anybody in public service wanted to do something, wanted to be part of the response, something I'll always remember, always be thankful for, and will always be, a part of me.